Welcome back to Worship in the Trenches. I'm Josh Sahulik, and I want to start today with something you've probably done at least once a week, and maybe even this morning. You're somewhere beautiful, maybe it's a sunrise, maybe it's a great meal, maybe it's a concert or a moment with your kids. And what's the first thing you'll do? Well, you might pull out your phone and you'll frame it, filter it, and post it. You check back later to see who liked it and who commented. We've become a culture of professional beholders. We see, we capture, we worship what we're capturing by making it look perfect, and then we testify to it by broadcasting it to everyone we know. And here's what's interesting. That impulse isn't entirely wrong. We were actually made to behold things, to respond to what we see and to make it known. The problem isn't the impulse. The problem is often what we're looking at. So here's the question for those of us in the trenches today. What are you looking at? And how is what you're beholding shaping how you worship and how you live? Today we're going to walk through some passages that don't condemn our impulse to behold and worship and witness, rather to redirect it. These passages call us to fix our eyes on the only thing truly worthy of our gaze. And then they show us what happens when we do that. So let's start with Psalm 98. I want you to notice the progression here because it's the same pattern that we follow every time we scroll through our feeds. The psalmist looks back in verses 2 and 3. The Lord has made known his salvation. His righteousness has he openly showed in the sight of the heathen. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. Now this isn't poetic exaggeration. Think about when God delivered Israel from Egypt. The surrounding nations watched. When he brought them through the Red Sea, when he established them in the land, and when he defended them from their enemies, the world took notice. Real events, real rescue, real history. But here's where it gets interesting. The psalm doesn't say, therefore remember these historical facts and file them away. What it actually says in verse 4 through 6, make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all the earth. Make a loud noise and rejoice, and sing praise. Sing unto the Lord with the harp and the voice of a psalm. Worship flows naturally from beholding God's faithfulness. And then notice this worship isn't quiet and it isn't private. The psalmist calls all creation itself to join in. Let the seas roar, let the floods clap their hands, and let the hills be joyful. Why? Because God has acted. And what he's done deserves a response that involves our whole being and the whole cosmos. So here's the pattern. God saves, people see, people worship, and that worship announces to the world what God has done. Unlike our endless scroll of self-documentation, this worship points away from the worshiper to the God who acts. Israel's songs weren't about Israel. They were about what they had beheld in God's mighty deeds. So as we move forward to Isaiah 12, these things become personal and immediate. Isaiah says, with joy shall you draw water out of the wells of salvation. Now I love this image because salvation isn't just a historical memory that you look at. It's a present resource. You can draw from it today. You can drink from the well of salvation right now. And what happens when you drink? Well, verse 4 and 5 tell us, declare his doings among the people. Make mention that his name is exalted. Sing unto the Lord, for he hath done excellent things. This is known in all the earth. Experiencing God's salvation leads directly to proclamation. The one who has tasted can't help but tell others where to find the well. This is where our culture's instincts get redeemed. We want to share what captivates us. We want others to see what we see. Now that's not wrong, but Isaiah shows us what happens when we behold is actually sustaining. It's actually life-giving. We're not posting for likes. We're not documenting for our personal brand. We're declaring God's works because we've been genuinely satisfied by him. And we want others to know where to find this same satisfaction. Another prophet named Malachi demonstrates the same thing, except he is pointing us towards someone specific. Malachi speaks of a day of judgment in verse 1, and then in verse 2 he says, but unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise, with healing in his wings. Now this isn't just nice poetry about a better future. Malachi is pointing towards a person. The Son of Righteousness will arise. And here's what happens next. 400 years of silence. No prophets, no new revelation. Israel waits for the promised Son to rise. And when he does rise, his name is Jesus. He is the light that dawns in darkness, and the righteousness of God in person. He is the healing that God promised. Everything Israel celebrated in Psalm 98 and everything they drew from the wells in Isaiah 12, everything they hoped for finds its focus in Jesus Christ. Here's where our worship gets properly centered. We stop taking pictures of sunsets and start beholding the sun. We stop crafting images of ourselves and start fixing our eyes on the image of the invisible God. Jesus is what our restless, scrolling, and searching hearts have been looking for all along. So what does it look like when we actually behold Christ? Well, let's look into the Gospels in Luke 21, because Jesus is going to tell us something about witness that cuts against everything our culture teaches us. You see, Jesus is sitting here with his disciples, teaching them about what is coming. The temple will fall, wars will erupt, and they will be persecuted, handed over to authorities, even betrayed by their own families, and many will be killed. You see, this is sobering language. In fact, it's frightening. But then Jesus says something remarkable in verse 13. It will turn to you for a testimony. Their suffering will become witness, and their endurance will make Christ visible to the watching world. And he promises in verse 15, I will give you a mouth and a wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. Here's where worship and witness converge under pressure. The disciples won't just preach about Jesus. Their faithfulness in suffering will demonstrate his faithfulness, and their patient endurance will testify that the Son of Righteousness has indeed risen, because they're drawing strength from a source that their persecutors can't see. The world will behold Christ through them, and this is radically different from our performative culture. Social media trains us to document the highlights, to show our best angles, and to curate suffering into inspiration content. But Jesus tells his disciples that their real witness will come through actual pain, actual betrayal, and actual loss. And what will make them compelling won't be their strength or their eloquence. It will be Christ's presence with them, giving them words and wisdom that couldn't come from themselves. The watching world will see something they can't explain, and that someone is Jesus. Now, not everyone faces dramatic persecution. In fact, most of us in the trenches live in the in-between. Your schedule probably looks like this. You go to work, you pay your bills, you love your families, you serve your church. So let's talk about 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, because Paul addresses this directly. Paul deals with people who won't work, who are being busybodies. And he says in verse 11 and 12, Now them that are such we command and exhort you by our Lord Jesus Christ, that with quietness they work and eat their own bread. Faithful work is also a witness. Paul made himself an example so that the Thessalonians would see what Christ-shaped life looks like in ordinary time. And he says in verse 13, But ye, brethren, be not weary in well-doing. The watching world sees Christ not only in our singing and in our suffering, but also in our steady, quiet faithfulness. When we work honestly and love consistently and don't grow weary of doing good, we testify that we're drawing from a well that doesn't run dry. Now, this cuts against our platform-driven culture. We want big moments, the viral testimonies, the dramatic transformation stories, but Paul says the everyday matters. When you show up to work and you do it with integrity, you're bearing witness. And when you keep loving that difficult person without posting about it, you're bearing witness. When you persist in faithfulness without an audience, Christ is still on display. You are beholding him in the ordinary, and that beholding shapes how you live, whether anyone notices it or not. So finally, we come back to Isaiah chapter 65, because this is where everything pulls together and forward. Here's what Isaiah says. Behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, God announces in verse 17. The wolf and lamb will feed together. No more weeping. God's people will enjoy the work of their hands without fear of loss. This is cosmic restoration, the undoing of the curse of sin, the world set aright. Notice the verb, I create. Future tense, but certain. God will complete what he started. The same God who delivered Israel is the same God who sent the Son of Righteousness with healing in his wings, and he will deliver all creation from decay. And just as past deliverance prompted worship, this future hope inspires rejoicing now. Verse 18 says, Be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. This is the song of those who have beheld Christ and know where the story is going. We're not pretending that everything is fine now. We look at brokenness honestly. We face suffering without flinching, and we work in a world that still groans under the weight of the curse. But we sing anyway, because we've seen the end from the beginning. We know that Christ, who has already conquered death, will return to make all things new. And this is what makes biblical hope different from our cultural optimism or carefully filtered presentations of life. We're not curating reality to look better than it is. We're beholding what God has promised and letting that future reality shape how we live in the present. New creation isn't just a nice idea. It's the certain future that Christ's resurrection has already set in motion. and those who behold this coming reality can't help but worship now, even in a world that's not yet made right. So now let me bring this home for those of us in the trenches of day-to-day living. What does it look like to behold Christ, and to let that beholding shape our worship and our witness? Well, first we have to put down our phones and look at Jesus. Not literally always, but spiritually. We have to break the habit of constantly looking at ourselves, our feeds, our metrics, our carefully constructed images, and we have to redirect our gaze to Christ. What He's done, who He is, what He's promised. Read the Gospels. Meditate on His words. Remember His cross and empty tomb. Let Him fill your vision. Secondly, it means accepting that worship isn't about us. When we truly behold Christ, the natural response is praise that points beyond ourselves. We stop performing our spirituality for an audience and start genuinely responding to what we've seen in Him. Psalms and hymns of Scripture aren't selfies. They're declarations of God's character and works. Our worship, whether we're planning it or participating in it, should follow this pattern. And finally, it means our witness becomes authentic rather than curated. You don't have to manufacture a perfect Christian life for display. You just have to let Christ be visible in your actual life, in your suffering, in your work, and in your ordinary faithfulness. When you behold Christ, He changes you, and that change becomes visible to others, whether you're trying to broadcast it or not. So here's the reality. The world is watching. They're watching you the same way you watch your feeds, looking for something real, something worth paying attention to. And when they see steady joy that doesn't depend on circumstances and hope that survives suffering, when they see faithful love that persists through ordinary days, they're seeing something that demands an explanation. So whether you're planning Sunday services, leading worship, volunteering, or sitting in the pew, the call is the same. Look unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. He's the one who can give the spiritual eyesight to see what others miss and live accordingly. Until then, may you become someone who beholds Christ so clearly that others can't help but see Him in you. Thank you for joining me in the trenches. It's my privilege to stand shoulder to shoulder with you.